Hey Spare Parts Army, I'm your average infantryman Chris Cappy. The MIM-104 Patriot is America's go-to strategic air defense missile system since the 1980s, claiming its interception probability during the Iraq War was 100%. But are the rumors true that the actual probability is far lower than officials claim? In this episode, we'll hear from a Patriot Missile expert that I spoke to about its new next-generation capabilities. This is perfect for a Christmas episode, huh? Up until recently, the Biden administration refused to send the Patriot Missile to Ukraine, fearing a response from Russia. So why are they all of a sudden changing their mind? Let's analyze if the Patriot has the capability to make a difference against the incoming Russian missiles and small kamikaze drones, how much training it requires, and how many systems Ukraine would likely need to defend themselves. But first, this is not a goat gun. This is not a goat gun. This is a goat gun. Your girlfriend has all those organic scented candles all over the house. Shouldn't you be able to express your creativity too? Sometimes when you're out in the field on patrol and you need a way to really confuse the out of the enemy, just start laying down some cover fire with your mini die-cast metal replica goat gun for a change. Whether you're into Soviet or NATO style firearms, there's a goat gun out there that any trigger puller will love. The level of detail on these replicas really surprised me. It works exactly like it does in real life, with the magazine release button, the safety, the slide, bolt catch, even the fire selector switch, and the buttstock. Quit trying to show off how many books you read and get some goat guns. Goat guns lets me throw on all kinds of 40mm grenade launchers, scopes, so I can express my inner sociopath. They make the perfect gift for your family or friend. I got one for my dad as a gift, and he said he's finally proud of me now. Goat guns are fun to assemble and make a great conversation piece at home, so you can now easily bring up the Second Amendment without forcing it into a conversation. If you like what you see, click the link in the description of this video or the pinned comment. It lets them know we sent you. In order to understand the Patriot Missile, we need to take a look at why it was invented in the first place. At the end of World War II, the Soviet Union was busy snatching up every German engineer they could and putting them to work on creating a brand new version of the V-2 rocket. By the 1950s, they already had a V-2 copycat known as the R-11 or the SCUD missile with a 3,000-meter range. But the United States, on the other hand, never adopted a long-range mobile missile launcher. They've instead chosen to focus on long-range bombers and anti-missile defenses to counter the SCUD. But creating a counter-missile solution to shoot down the SCUDs proved incredibly difficult, and by October of 1964, the DoD still had no effective mobile missile interceptor. This is when they began the surface-to-air missile program that would eventually lead to the MIM-104 Patriot. Raytheon was selected as the prime R&D contractor, and they came up with a prototype that used a track-via-missile semi-active radar, which was able to reduce the amount of personnel required to operate it down to just 3 soldiers. It also looked exactly like a dump truck with hydraulics in the best way. A Patriot battery can be deployed and ready to fire within just 1 hour. But the fact of the matter is, this new high-tech technology requires a considerable amount of training. Yes, it's true, the basic training for a Patriot operator only requires 13 weeks of advanced individual training, but the Patriot System Repair course takes just over a year at 53 weeks. And the Fire Control Operator course is 20 weeks long. This is why when the question of sending the Patriot to Ukraine first came up in March 2022, the Department of Defense said, quote, "There's no discussion about putting a Patriot battery in Ukraine. In order to do that, you would have to put US troops with it to operate it. It's not a system that the Ukrainians are familiar with, and as we have made it very clear, there will be no US troops fighting in Ukraine. Typically, the US only sends the Patriot to countries that allow them to have boots on the ground. But now that we're coming up on a year since the start of the war in Ukraine, suddenly the Department of Defense is reportedly considering sending the Patriot missile. The reason for this very well could be in response to recent ballistic missile barrages from Russia against Ukraine's energy infrastructure that sent 50% of their country without heat or power. But it's also possible that the past year, Ukrainian soldiers have been potentially secretly training for the past year on how to maintain the Patriot, and they finally are ready now. But I was curious about how difficult it is truly for a soldier to operate behind the fire control with the next generation technology. Well, I was actually given the chance to use a Raytheon test demonstrator of the Patriot missile to see what it's like to use the new NASAMS Ghost Eye technology. So the newest upgrade allows soldiers to track and fire multiple rounds at enemy aircraft using a touchpad feature.
Say this is an air defense system. This is the brain. That's the eyes, the radar. Got it. And that's the punch arm.
So you can actually see and track air-breathing targets. So they can confirm if you have a kill or not instantly.
You just click the touchscreen radar track to get a lock, and then you hit the fire button. So even as an average infantryman like myself, I was able to figure it out in only a few minutes. It's integrated with the NASAM, so the radar expands the range and altitude, dramatically increasing overall effectiveness of the air defense capabilities at 360 degrees coverage, instead of how in the past the radar needed to be pointed in one direction or field of fire. While using the demonstrator, I was able to see that it fires the Patriot missiles about 4.2 seconds apart, and once close enough, the PAC-3 Patriot missile acquires the target with its own radar seeker housed in the nose of the warhead, which detects the radar signals coming from the incoming target. Each radar has a tracking range of up to 100 kilometers and can track 100 targets at once while firing 9 missiles independently at different targets.
Now you have 2 missiles from different, let's say, locations going towards the same target.
And that makes it more difficult.
That increases the probability of kill.
Originally, the Patriot missile system was actually meant to only be an anti-aircraft missile, but during the 1970s and 80s, the threat of ballistic missiles had only grown for NATO. The Soviets had continued to invest heavily in upgrading the SCUD to the OTR-23 Oka mobile missile launcher with an estimated range of 500 miles or 800 kilometers. In 1986, the Patriot was quickly upgraded with the PAC-1 software package in response. It gave the targeting computers of the Patriot a brand new ability to track and shoot down ballistic missiles. This would end up becoming its major distinguishing factor from other anti-air systems that focus on taking out aircraft mainly. But intercepting smaller missiles is more difficult, and controversy surrounding the Patriot's true capabilities and its hit probability have always existed. The Patriot missile's original PAC-1 software patch designed to target missiles didn't really have the time necessary to go through all of the testing paces, so it was rushed out into use because of the onset of the Gulf War. It saw its first real-world combat test in 1991 during the Persian Gulf War. The US had its collective fingers crossed. On January 18, 1991 at 4:30 a.m., Bravo Battery 27ADA detected a SCUD missile launch from the Iraqis headed straight for American ground troops based in Saudi Arabia. The Patriot fired 2 missiles traveling at Mach 2.8 or over 2,100 miles per hour, and they quickly reported a successful interception and destruction of the incoming SCUD. The story was reported widely across the media as the first successful combat missile interception, being picked up by outlets everywhere, and this is where the confusion starts. A February 1992 report by the United States General Accountability Office showed that it was actually just a software glitch by the Patriot and no targets were really destroyed. Just 1 month later, on February 25th, a Patriot missile failed to intercept an incoming Iraqi SCUD, but this time, it ended up being real, and 28 American soldiers were KIA from the incident. This error was due to a software issue again that caused a delay of just 1/3 of a second, so it missed the incoming SCUD by 600 meters wide. Effectiveness of the Patriot missile interceptor's abilities since the Gulf War have been hotly contested. So for instance, President Bush Sr. originally reported a success rate of 97%, with 41 of the 42 SCUDs destroyed. But Theodore Postal with MIT calculated the Patriot had an incredibly dismal success rate of anywhere between 0 and 10%.
The optical evidence from video clips indicates there was a very high rate of Patriot misses. And when I say miss, I'm talking about misses of hundreds of meters. I have no way of convincing myself that the intercept rate was better than 15 or 25%.
The Center for Strategic and International Studies said that the MIT method of analysis was kind of incorrect because they were counting SCUDs that were partially hit as a failure, even though it prevented it from hitting its target. Following Desert Storm, the Patriot was upgraded with the PAC-2, PAC-3 missiles that fly much faster at 4.1 or over 3,100 miles per hour. Although I've seen other sources claim Mach 5, and a lot of this is top secret, of course. The whole point of these upgrades was to address the fact that there were some problems with the Patriot still, but did it fix everything? So the PAC-2 missile upgrade flies further at 160 kilometers compared to the PAC-3's shorter 30 kilometer. The PAC-3 missile is a lot smaller, allowing for 4 missiles to be carried in a single container, so a single launcher has 16 missiles instead of just 4. It's common to see launchers holding a combination of all of these different variations at once. These missiles reportedly had a high success rate during Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003. A detailed report from the Army claimed that 9 out of 9 Iraqi missiles were intercepted by the Patriot. Although the report does point out that the Patriot missiles were malfunctioning days before the invasion started due to the harsh conditions. Raytheon had to send engineers into the field to get the systems to work. This is a luxury Ukraine would not have if they run into problems with the equipment. But this hasn't stopped our adversaries from questioning the Patriot's real true abilities. Experts at the Middlebury Institute of the International Studies determined 2 attacks from 2017 were unlikely to have been intercepted, despite statements by officials in Saudi Arabia. According to social media video, it shows one Patriot interceptor exploding after launch and another making a U-turn in midair and then striking the ground directly in front of itself. With top secret systems, it's going to be difficult to tell the truth, but Raytheon says the Patriot has shot down drones in Israel, Su-24 aircraft in Syria, SCUDs in Saudi Arabia, and just recently, in January of this year, incoming missiles in the UAE. Raytheon reports that since 2015, the Patriot has successfully intercepted 150 ballistic munitions around the world. Each Patriot interceptor missile costs approximately $4 million per round, and the launchers cost about $10 million each. Russian cruise missiles fired from their new Iskander mobile missile launcher cost around $3 million a round, and the types of targets that they aim at are an order of magnitude more expensive. For example, in September, the World Bank estimated it would take $350 billion to repair Ukraine's physical infrastructure. Much of that damage was done by the kinds of drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles that could not be intercepted by Ukraine's Soviet-era air defense systems. But if the Patriots are fired at $50,000 cheap drones, it becomes less cost-effective. So, how many Patriot missile systems might it take to defend Kyiv? For the right answer, you'd have to hire a think tank in DC, but if you want my low-budget average infantryman advice, we can place them all around the city and see approximately one battery would suffice. The aid package confirmed by the Biden administration is for $1.8 billion in military assistance, and that's enough for reportedly 1 Patriot battery will be sent with 8 different launchers. Sending the Patriot could free up S-300 air defense systems in Ukraine to go protect their troops on the front lines from these Soviet airplanes. News that the US might send the Patriot naturally led to a response from Russia, with the Russian government announcing that deployment would mean even broader involvement of military personnel in the hostilities and could entail possible consequences, along with the Russian Ministry of Defense releasing videos showing nuclear ICBMs being loaded into mobile missile silos. Putin further went on to say that if these Patriot missile systems were to be deployed to Ukraine, that they would, quote, along with NATO personnel, would immediately become a legitimate target for our armed forces. Would sending the Patriot missile mean an escalation in the war in Ukraine?
It's a defensive weapon system. It's not escalatory. We'd love to not have to have them use it. Just stop the attacks.
Because Patriot systems have such long ranges, they're often spread out over hundreds of miles. The Patriot Data Information Link is a network created by these radar systems over long distances, which allows for a real-time secure data transfer that paints a picture for the ground commanders of what's going on in the sky across their entire system of launchers. It's such a robust communications network that reportedly the picture goes all the way to the president to provide information on international situations.
The system, of course, comes with recommendations to the operator based on complex processing and algorithms.
But there are other locations in the country that will require protection, like their power plants, and Ukraine has been using 100 of the active S-300 batteries with approximately 250 launchers that they inherited upon the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. By April 8th, the Russians had knocked out at least 21 of these S-300 Ukrainian launchers that outside analysts also confirm with photos and videos, and they say it's probably much higher than that at this point. But there is one hole in this strategy, because typically, Patriot missiles deployed in combination of what's called the THAAD defense system. So far, the US is not planning to send THAAD launchers to Ukraine. The THAAD missile flies twice as fast as the Patriot, about 6,200 miles per hour, and it goes twice as far at 200 kilometers, and it attacks these kinds of high-altitude ballistic missiles that the Patriot might miss. Would the US have the ability to donate this amount necessary to protect Ukraine? Saudi Arabia shoots off a significant number of these Patriot missiles each month in order to defend their own critical infrastructure like their oil fields. Meanwhile, Patriot missile manufacturing remains at a very low level because they've been in not very high demand until now, with all the counterinsurgency that we've been fighting. So for instance, in 2017, the Houthis attacked Saudi Arabia and their Patriot locations with their kamikaze drones, the same ones supplied by Iran that ended up in Ukraine. Drones are smaller targets, more difficult for the Patriot to detect with their radar systems, although the new Patriot Ghost Eye claims to have upgraded capabilities to now target them. We know these Houthi rebel attacks were able to successfully strike these different oil installations and airports in Saudi Arabia. This could be that the Patriot missiles needed another upgrade and they just needed to adjust their tactics. It could be any number of reasons why they were able to get through the Patriot defense systems. It's not perfect. The worst part about escalation in war is that it's often very justified. Ukraine has every right to defend themselves and even to strike deep into Russian territory. It's more than a fair response. The big takeaway here is that despite Putin's threats of escalation, the Patriot will be uniquely deployed to protect civilian lives, something that I think we can all agree is universally a good thing. What are your thoughts on the Patriot possibly being sent to Ukraine? Is it worth the implications or is it not enough? Add me on Instagram if you're interested in an updated link to all of my open source intelligence tools and links to sources used in this video.